Hey everyone. So I'm going to take a little bit of time here to go over the song lyrics that you had to read and discuss for the week 5 discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, huh? You remember the song was Whisky Lullaby, all right, written by Bill Anderson and John Randall down here, made famous and recorded by Brad Paisley and Alison Krauss. It was not originally supposed to be a duet, which I think is interesting because I think it adds a whole different layer to the story when you have both Brad Paisley and Alison Krauss, splitting the song. It's a lovely song. It's so sad though, right? If you watched the video to the song, which you might not have, you weren't required to, it really helps solidify what the song is about, but I don't think you need the video to at least figure out, for the most part, what's going on. It's basically what we have here is we have a man who has had his heart broken by the woman that he loves, and he really just can't get past it, and he drinks himself to death. And when they find him, he's holding a note that says, "I'll love her till I die." And then they bury him beneath a willow tree. And then it switches to her point of view, or not really her point of view, but her side. And she felt so guilty that he couldn't get over the heartbreak and drank himself to death, holding that note. She completely blamed herself and couldn't handle her guilt. And so she basically follows the same path that he did. She drinks herself to death. And she's not holding a note when they find, her body. She's holding a picture of him. So it was, and then they bury her next to him beneath the willow. So it's just this ridiculously sad song, sad story. If you watch the video, we get a little more details, and it's hard to say if the video is exactly what these two songwriters had in mind in terms of the story. So I don't really want to say that the man in this song was definitely a soldier returning from war, and that what she did to break his heart was definitely cheating on him, because that's what happens in the video. We don't really know just from the lyrics exactly what happens. The video gives us that information, but the video could just be the director's interpretation of the lyrics, not necessarily what the songwriters intended. All right, so all we know from the lyrics themselves is that something happened. She broke his heart, and then everything else happens after that, right? So that's what the song is essentially about. Obviously, what we're doing here with these song lyrics is looking at how song lyrics incorporate elements of poetry. And I think this song is just a beautiful example of that. So we have this first line here. She put him out like the burning end of a midnight cigarette. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a song that begins with a more perfect first line. The line is just packed with layers. So she put him out, right? She put him out, meaning she kicked him out of the house. She put him out, like snuffed out their love, right? Broke his heart. She put him out. Could it mean that she killed him? We find out later that she certainly thinks that she's responsible for his death. So there's even just those first few words are packed with multiple layers and adding different layers of meaning to the song. And then like the burning end of a midnight cigarette. So burning, when we think of things that burn. I mean, obviously fire can be destructive, but also, love and passion are burning. So another word that has multiple layers to it to add more meaning to the lyrics. And then the end of that line, like the burning end of a midnight cigarette. Not just a cigarette, a midnight cigarette. So sort of like, having that last smoke at the end of the day, right? Saying goodbye to the day, marking an ending. Obviously, literally the ending of the cigarette, but a midnight cigarette indicates that we're drawing closure to more than just that cigarette. It's also, she put him out, like snuffed it out, really put a cigarette out. It's an end to the relationship. Snuffing the life out of something, taking the energy away from it, killing it, basically. So it's also a bit of foreshadowing in terms of what happens to each of them. It's just a lovely first line. So much to unpack just in one line, right? And then we get more of the story. She broke his heart. He spent his whole life trying to forget. We watched him drink his pain away a little at a time. So a bit of a metaphor there, right? Drink your pain away. But he never could get drunk enough to get her off his mind, right? Until the night. And then we have the best metaphor, just perfect. He put that bottle to his head and pulled the trigger. So obviously, the comparison here is the bottle to a gun, right? Putting a gun to your head is a very quick and efficient way of ending your own life. Using a bottle to do it means drinking yourself to death, which is slower and much more agonizing. But eventually it does kill him, right? So he put that bottle to his head and pulled the trigger and finally drank away her memory. Another bit of a metaphor there. Life is short, but this time it was bigger than the strength he had to get up off his knees. It's a very interesting image as well. Obviously, when someone is drinking themselves into a stupor to the point where they can drink themselves to death, we could imagine, they're not very stable on their feet. They're probably stumbling around, falling, right? So maybe he had, you could see it like that, the strength he had to get up off his knees, he's falling. He's on the ground and he just can't get up. It also has this connotation that could easily make someone think of being on their knees in prayer, right? And that just adds a little more sadness to it, like if you think of it that way, he'd been on his knees in prayer, trying to get over her, trying to move forward, trying to mend his brokenness, and he can't. So it's, he's sort of given up. It's an interesting image, I think, especially when the literal image is just, him being so drunk that he can't get up off of his knees. It's just very sad. We found him with his face down in the pillow with a note that said, "I'll love her till I die." And when we buried him beneath the willow, the angels sang a whiskey lullaby. In the video, they meet under a willow. That's kind of where they fall in love, underneath this willow tree. So in the video, it has even more significance that they're under the willow tree. We don't know that here just by reading the lyrics. There's nothing to indicate that that willow tree has any other significance to them. But we do know that willows, we call them weeping willows, right? Because of the way it looks like they're crying. So that's really probably why that particular kind of tree was chosen in the lyrics. It fits very well, the weeping willow. Such a sad story. And the angels sang a whiskey lullaby. That's a very interesting image too. The angels singing a whiskey lullaby. So a lullaby, very soothing and calming and loving, used to put babies to sleep. So a lullaby is something that evokes, kind of love and innocence and calmness. Uh, Sleep kind of is a type of, it's always been compared to a type of death um, throughout cultures and throughout history, uh, especially in literature and art. There is this very close connection between sleep and death. So kind of an illusion there as well. A whiskey lullaby, you're singing a lullaby to put a baby to sleep. And in this case, we're putting someone's been put to sleep for good. They're no longer alive. A whiskey lullaby, though, that just adds a different dimension to this. Whiskey is also, smooth and warm, but then it can burn. If it's too strong, it can cause some problems. Obviously, if you drink too much of it, day after day after day, it's going to cause some problems. So it's this, it's like it's a phrase that makes perfect sense, but doesn't make any sense at all. Whiskey lullaby. Like, drinking too much, having a little too much whiskey puts you to sleep. Having a little, whiskey has that sort of warm smoothness to it, but it's still not quite the same as just a lullaby. A whiskey lullaby is a little more intense. But it's interesting that the angels are singing a whiskey lullaby. And then we get a switch, right? Now we start to learn about her. So the rumors flew, but nobody knew how much she blamed herself. For years and years, she tried to hide the whiskey on her breath. She's drinking too much as well and trying to hide it from other people. She finally drank her pain away a little at a time, but she never could get drunk enough to get him off her mind until the night she put that bottle to her head and pulled the trigger, finally drank away his memory. So we get the same exact chorus here, right? Life is short, but this time it was bigger than the strength she had to get up off her knees. We found her with her face down in the pillow, clinging to his picture for dear life. We laid her next to him beneath the willow while the angels sang a whiskey lullaby. I'm not going to go through all of that again because it's literally everything that we just went through up here in this section. But that's kind of what makes it beautiful and perfect is the mirror image. And that's another poetic element that runs through the song is the repetition. Sometimes repetition can create monotony and be very boring, but when it is used correctly, purposefully, thoughtfully, it can be very effective. And in this case, the repetition works really well because it just, he loved her so much that he couldn't get past the heartbreak and he drank himself to death. She couldn't get past her own guilt, presumably because she loved him too, and drank herself to death. So their stories aren't exact duplicates of each other. But they are mirror images. Basically like the exact details aren't the same when you look at them side by side, but when they face each other, it's almost the exact same. And that repetition helps enforce the emotional impact of each verse and chorus. So it's used very well. But anyway, I don't think I'm going to really go into too much more. I think, again, the song is not a difficult one to figure out. in terms of, what it means. I think we are left with questions, especially if you don't watch the video. But even if you do watch the video, that's only one person's interpretation of this story. Very beautiful one, but all we know is what we're told here in the lyrics, and that just means we know that she broke his heart. He couldn't get past it, drank himself to death. She felt guilty, couldn't get past it, drank herself to death. And in death, they are together under the willow tree. Okay, I think that's about it. Go ahead and complete the journal now. If you really have, some pressing questions or comments that you want to make, and hear back from me right away, go ahead and shoot me a text message or an email. Otherwise though, you just share your thoughts in the journal, and I can't wait to hear your reactions to it.